Okay, good afternoon everybody, and welcome to a warm room for the first time in 2015 in Glasgow. Welcome to the HATII second conversation, and that second is important, on digital curation, and this time with William Kilbride and Seamus Ross. I'll introduce them very briefly, but I'm going to ask them to talk a bit more about themselves in a minute. So Professor Seamus Ross is well known to some of us, and to some of you it's a completely new face. Seamus is the Dean of the Faculty of Information at the University of Toronto, and previously was Director at HATII here. And William is the Executive Director of the Digital Preservation Coalition and also lodges in HATII. And I should introduce myself. My name is Anne Gow, and I'm currently Head of Subjects at HATII. And when I was thinking a little bit about this conversation, what it would be like, my thoughts, of course, are immediately drawn to the leaders' debates that we've been having recently in the general election. So I'll leave it for you to decide which one is Natalie Bennett and which one is Nigel Farage. It's non-partisan. Clearly, I am David Dimbleby personified. So, when you Young asked me to chair this, I was very happy to do that, mostly because I've worked with these two guys for many years and have a great deal of respect for what they say on digital preservation. But I was interested when Young says it's HATII's second conversation, and I thought, what was the first one? I can't remember that one, but there was a first one. And in fact, Seamus and I did a little bit of digital preservation, curation, information retrieval yesterday, and I discovered that the first conversation happened in December 2004, so almost 11 years ago, between Charles Dollar and Seamus Ross. And there we have indeed, because it was filmed as we've been filmed now, so in 10 years' time somebody else can stand here, we get to our first conversation and fill that one in. But that was an interesting conversation, and actually we have the videos, we still have the shared drive, so I'm going to find and give them to you, put them onto the blog, so we can have a little listen to the conversations happening 10 years ago and compare to the conversations happening today. Turn the mobile phones on.
That's okay. Whoever that was, thank you.
So, what's going to happen this afternoon is that there's a series of questions, framework questions, that I'm going to ask William and Seamus, and they're going to give me their ideas on them. But really it's about a conversation, not just us sitting here listening to them talk, how entertaining as that may be, but it's a conversation with everybody here. So the idea being that they will give some thoughts, but I want to immediately break it open to the audience and get the audience to join in. We're using the framework questions as a way to structure the conversation, not purely just to hear their answers, then let's all head off. So I will be looking for you guys to participate and think a little about it and questions. We don't have to stick to the framework questions, we can move on, but they will be there. So really, I think we'd like to move on. We do have 2 hours for this, but I don't think we'll maybe go for the full 2 hours. So we'll obviously need 2 minutes. So I think I'd like to start by asking you to introduce yourself, say a little bit about yourself, and then we'll start off with the first question. So, Seamus, you're at the table. Kilbride, go first.
Well, I'll get in early by saying I'm an escaped archaeologist, and I'm not the only escaped archaeologist sitting at the table today. Many of those I work for the Digital Preservation Coalition. Thank you, and to you Young also for the invitation to be part of this. I am an archaeologist. I was an archaeologist, I suppose, early 90s, graduating early 90s. At the time when archaeology as a discipline was very keen on the adoption of new technology. What we hadn't realised is that the adoption of new technology implied lots of data that was coming out of the ground, and of course it's under particular risk in archaeology because the excavation is effectively destructive. And what I found myself doing, and I didn't know what it was called at the time, and you probably remember this because I was here in Glasgow University at the time, just trying to do lots of data management, just trying to figure out what on earth to do with all this stuff from one season to the next, in DBase 2 and a whole variety of old GIS formats and geophysics formats. I discovered, I think about 1998, 99, that actually there were other people worrying about this problem too, and that was an absolute moment of revelation. I found my way down to York for a little while, worked at the university there, and after a series of coincidences and chances, found my way back to the DPC and to Glasgow, to Glasgow University back in 2009, and I've been working for the DPC ever since. I won't say much about the DPC because this isn't the time to do it, but it's a fabulous little network, a fabulous little organisation, and it's great to be wrong to describing it as being at the helm. It's almost like it's sort of making the coffees and the sandwiches, so that this very impressive array of people in and around the DPC can make the most of their connections and their own skills to each other. So thank you very much, Anne.
You're very welcome, very pleased to have you here.
Thanks, William. So, William's absolutely right. I started out as an archaeologist as well. And in 1990, I was working for the British Academy as a developer, building systems for everything from managing student grants through to how they could computerize their projects. And I told this one group in Romanesque sculpture on how, forget about using photographs. We were going to use digital images. I was going to scan the negatives. And I left the room not knowing whether this was possible or not. And somebody said to me also, question, well, what are you going to do about keeping this stuff accessible? These negatives, they last a long time. So the reason about Charles Dollar is that in 1990 I actually wrote to Charles Dollar and I asked him, I found your name someplace and you seem to know a little bit about digital preservation. Is there some stuff you can send me on? He sent me a little box about this big with all the papers. Most of them were white papers from NARA, the National Archives and Records Administration Center in the US. And it was all there was to know. Fast forward now, probably fill this room, probably only need a box about that big to actually know what's really worth knowing, but you can fill this room with the stuff. And he really introduced me to the problems of digital preservation. And then when I came here to Glasgow, we were looking around for what could differentiate ourselves in HATII from what was happening elsewhere in digital humanities. And I worked with Anne Gow on a project on digital archaeology, not excavating old archaeological materials, but actually trying to understand what techniques you might use to recover digital materials or to protect them if they have become damaged or otherwise lost. And that really is the foundation, that little report that Anne and I did together, really is the foundation of the work that we've done since then. And a lot of other people's work is based on that.
Great. Thank you very much. So hopefully you'll know a little bit more about the people you have in front of you. Nice to see you.